Welcome to episode 6 in the Idea to Bottle series. I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is that in the last video, I absolutely overdosed on safralene, which totally ruined that batch. But the good news is that I managed to create 3 new batches, and I will explain absolutely everything about how I came to these. But the result is we have kind of two usable directions for this fragrance. That means I have version 1 through version 4. First of all, how did I know that safralene is too much? And there's also one other thing to mention. It is not just safralene. The whole formula has ingredients that boost that safralene feeling. It has eugenol, it has the fougere, which it does not smell like safralene, but it kind of boosted the whole feeling. So it's not just that safralene was too much, the overall formula needed some kind of recalibration. But the first thing that came to my mind before I realized that this is the fougere and the other materials is when I left the blotter for a couple hours. And if initially it smelled kind of okay with the pineapple and everything else, then as it dried down, those things went away and all I could smell was safralene. If it was blended in with the other materials just like in the top notes, I may have not minded, but it was just safralene and that's just not the vibe I was going for. So the same day when I filmed that video, I sat down and I created this. I created a version 2, which is a intuitive iteration of the first version. What I did was essentially remove the safralene altogether because I realized I don't want that smell. To be honest, the decisions I made here to increase mountain air, the vanillin, the hedione, and the amber were not the right ones because apart from safralene being too much, the overall vibe of the fragrance was way too sweet, way too floral, way too soft, way too creamy. It smelled interesting. It smelled like something cosmetic, but it did not smell like what I was initially going for, which was a masculine, light, transparent kind of fragrance with edges. This just felt like a women's fragrance, to be honest. But I thought maybe it's just safralene, and maybe it's because I don't have enough of mountain air, because I thought mountain air is a ozonic kind of accord, but turns out it's more like a floral. I also was under the wrong impression that increasing hedione would help with projection and would help to make it more transparent, but what it really did was make it more blurry. It did not add more of the edges that I wanted. I did ask ChatGPT what could be the problem, and it explained that some of the powderiness might be coming from the rose, which has ionones in it, the mountain air, which has a lot of hedione. Essentially, all these materials, the rose, the mountain air, the amber, vanillin, hedione, and also ambrofix, together create a smooth, powdery, soft, and blurry effect, which is not what I wanted. As you can see, I have the two blotters here. This was the version 1, which I could throw out because I'm not going to use it. This is version 2. It is 32%. I like it still after the other ones. I came back to this and I do like what it smells like. It was just not my original intention, so I wanted to refine it further. That's why I made the version 3 and version 4. The next version I created was this A073, which is even lighter at 18%. I did not dilute. It's just because I'm using the modern cedar accord, which is an 8% dilution. So since we're increasing the relative usage of this, also the overall dilution of the blend decreased. Finally, today in the morning, I created another intuitive batch, which was the A074, even less, which I cannot say is too successful, but it does prove the point about the materials, which we will talk about later. Now, you might be wondering why there are so many directions, and well, to be honest, this is quite normal. In perfumery, they have not just 3, they have hundreds of different iterations for finding the best formula. But I did not want to go with just the first one I made, which was unsuccessful. So I created another one. Then after some days, I thought, how do I make it even more masculine? Which was the overall direction I was going in. And using AI, I uncovered that I'm using way too much mountain air, which is one of the big reasons for the effect that I don't want. The large use of hedione, vanillin, rose, mountain air, which is 50% hedione, and ambrofix. I wanted to see what it would smell like if I removed these materials. Because remember when we initially tried to find the direction for the perfume, I had the different blotters and I was smelling. That is what I was aiming for because I know the potential of these combinations, and I was just not sure why am I having so much powderiness, which I did not smell at all when I was doing the blotter fan test. So then in version 3, you can see we increased modern cedar, almost double it. We removed the classic rose completely. We removed vanillin. We removed the extra hedione. We also heavily decreased the timber silk and the mountain air accord. Initially, when I was blending version 3, I did not have Cephalus nor Limbanol or the spices, and I liked the direction. I smelled it and I was like, okay, this is so much better than the previous version with the rose and the overdose mountain air, the vanilla and all these other ones. This is better, but now it seems like the heart is too smooth. The opening is alright. We have 17% of the champagne sparkle. The opening feels kind of luxurious, at least to me, but the heart felt too smooth because the fougere that I'm using is by its nature quite smooth and creamy. And the base too, which is mostly timber silk and a little bit of the amber, there was no contrast, there was no dryness. There was nothing that would scratch my nose and make me feel like the perfume has a texture. So ChatGPT suggested adding Cephalus and Norlimbanol, which are woods that are dry woods. They are supposed to help with projection and help to give your nose something to grab onto. Same with black pepper and nutmeg. Black pepper is a warm pepper spice. I could have added pink pepper, but I thought black pepper would just smell better in here. Intuition, hard to explain how I feel about this. Same with nutmeg. We added these to add spice to the heart, so that it's not just a smooth and creamy fougere in the heart. That is why we added these. I blended version 3 and I was quite happy about it. I put a slight test on my wrist and I went to cook food and I could smell it. The projection was quite well. I was really happy with this result. And well, today I just decided what would happen if we remove the mountain air completely. What would happen if we try to make it even more of this? If we try to go even more in this direction that we have been going in by reducing all these feminine materials. So version 4 is with increased cedar, increased fougere. We decreased the amber, which even though it smells lovely, it adds sweetness and it makes the perfume feel kind of powdery. Everything else stayed the same pretty much, but yes, we reduced the mountain air, which was previously taking up 8% of the formula, and that is not a small amount. As you can see, I have many blotters here because I did a quite creative approach to this. I did not create 10 different vials with 10 different tests because, we're on a budget, we're trying to save some material. So what I did, the way I was blending, is I started by adding the materials that I was sure I need in here. That is the modern cedar accord, that is the fougere, that is the Cephalus and Orlimbanol, black pepper, and nutmeg. That is kind of the core of version 4. And as you can see, it is, I think, one of these two here. I smelled it and I was like, wow, this could be a perfume on its own. This is the direction I was going in. It doesn't have the rose. It doesn't have any of the weird sweetness and powderiness. It is a woody fougere with a little bit of spice. So if you want, you could explore this direction. Create a cedar accord, create a fougere accord, add a little bit of woods and a little bit of spice. One thing I did not mention is that I have two different fougere accords. I have two versions. The first version, which I've been using so far through version 1 to 3, is quite smooth and soft. One of the reasons why I wanted to even start version 4 is I thought initially that I'll just take version 3, I'll recreate it exactly the same, but I will swap the fougere 1 for the other version. Since I know the other version is more fresh, it's more sour, and it might take me in a better direction. I still would want to try this now that I've tried version 3 and 4. I would want to create a version 5, which is almost exactly like version 3, but removing the mountain air, we don't need that, and changing Fougere 1 for 2. That would be interesting to smell. But I got a little bit off track. In version 4, like I said, I started with the Fougere, the cedar, and the spices and some of the woods. Then I wanted to be sure that none of these other materials are contributing to the smell that I don't like. So what I did is I added one by one. I added pineapple, I added the champagne sparkle one by one, and I dipped the blotter. So here I was adding sparkle and I just smelled and I was like, did this change the formula for better or for worse? I know this is not the typical way of judging fragrances because you need to wait weeks and all that, but from my experience, it's never really the case. In my experience, you can make quick decisions and see intuitively where this is going. There is truth that in maceration and the maturation process, aggressive smells kind of quiet down and the quiet smells come up. But in my experience, the decisions I make while I'm doing these tests, they lead me in the right direction, so that's why I'm doing this. I'm not saying you have to do this. Right, so I tried with the sparkle accord. It did not destroy anything. I added, I think, the first version actually was without the Norlimbanol and Cephalus. It was just Fougere, cedar, and spice. Then I added the Cephalus and Norlimbanol, and I could instantly feel that one of them made the perfume feel kind of cold and metallic, perhaps, but it was the right direction. Then I added the sparkle. Then I added the pineapple, which I could immediately tell did something to the fragrance. It made the top a little sweet and added slight fruitiness that I very much like, but it's not a essential addition for this fragrance. And finally, I added amber, but I was quite skeptical because I know amber is one of the materials that in the previous versions was causing some of the ruckus or a little bit of this sweetness. So what I did is I dipped my blotter in the blend. So the final blend, which did not have amber yet. I dipped the blotter. I waited for this to dry a little bit. And I dipped the tip. As you can see, it's slightly amber colored. I dipped the tip. Well, that was not intentional, but I dipped the tip in this amber accord. And I smelled, trying to see how would amber affect this fragrance. What is the effect? What is the change? The result was quite hard to judge because it was too much. So then what I did is I dipped a new blotter without any previous material. I just dipped it in the amber. I dipped a new one in the blend. And then I rubbed them together. Like this was the amber and I just did a little bit of rub to simulate what would happen if I added a microscopic amount of amber. And the result was nice. It was slightly warmer and added a little bit of the powderiness, which I did like. So I decided to add the smallest amount of amber possible. In version 3, amber accord is 9% relative. In version 4, it is just 3. So it is almost 3 times less. And we could go even more. But the thing with version 4 is that after I added the amber, it felt like everything became less projective. And I'm not really sure why, because I didn't add much. But my guess is that the amber somehow affects the projection. And actually, I take my words back. I smelled the full version again, and it is feeling great. I think I was just overwhelmed with all the smells, because I was doing so many smell tests, so it was hard to judge. But in the moment, it felt like the projection has gone down. But now when I smell it again, I feel like, I like this direction. It is so far from version 2, but not a different identity. And this is what I wanted to talk about next, is that after a little while, I came back and I compared all of these. I compared version 72 with 73 and 74, which I'll try to show it to you. They are different in color because there's different amounts of amber. The whole experience when smelling these three reminds me of when I was at a department store and I was smelling Dior Sauvage, the EDT, the Parfum, and the Elixir. They all smell like the same kind of fragrance idea, but slightly different. And that gave me the idea that if we were to make a fragrance line, this might be something we could do. After having this realization, I thought, all right, maybe in this series, we're not just going to brand one perfume, we're going to create a perfume line. You know, like the Dior Elixir, Dior Parfum, and the Dior EDT. We're going to have our own EDT, our own Parfum, and our own Elixir. If you smell the 74, it smells very light, it probably doesn't last that long, and it's quite transparent. If I were to smell the 73 version, it feels slightly more dense, slightly more sweet and powdery, and more feminine. And then when you smell the 72, now this one, it really feels like an elixir compared to the 73. The 74 feels like a fresh daytime scent compared to the 73 or 72, which could be more like an evening or a night scent. I'm still not decided if I'm going to bottle all of these or just one, but at least for the branding exercises, I think we are gonna do all of them to simply understand how we would go about it if we wanted to create different kinds of sub-brands within the same brand. Let's say we're talking about, I know some of these scents like Valentino Born in Roma. The bottles, they all look the same, but they have different colors and different labels and things like that. That is maybe the direction we're going with this. We'll see. So for this video, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to explain what happened, the refinements that we made, how I came to these refinements. I'm quite pleased to say that I like what we've created here. Can't really say which one is my favorite. They're all good in their own way. Over the next few videos, we're going to build the brand around us and move from there. Thanks for watching, and speak to you soon.